The emergency beacon screamed across 17 star systems before anyone dared to answer it. I still remember the moment our patrol vessel picked up that distress call. 3 cycles of service in the Galactic Survey Corps, and I had never heard anything quite like it. The signal pulsed with a desperate, primal urgency that made my sensory appendages curl inward. My commander, a grizzled Vorthian named Kel, looked at the readout and made a sound that translated roughly to, "Absolutely not." "That's coming from Sector 47B, he said, his 3 eyes narrowing in what I had learned meant extreme concern. The human colony world. Now, let me pause here to explain something. Humans had joined the Galactic Federation only 2 solar cycles prior, and their reputation had preceded them like a shock wave through subspace. They were the species that had fought off the Kravik invasion using nothing but chemical propellants and nuclear fission. The species that had somehow survived on a death world where the weather itself tried to kill them daily, where the local fauna included creatures that could pierce steel with their teeth and serpents whose venom could drop a Morgalian battle beast in seconds. Kel wanted nothing to do with them. But regulations were regulations, and a distress call was a distress call. So we went. The colony was called New Haven, which I found hilarious. These humans had looked at a planet with Category 4 predators, toxic flora, and atmospheric conditions that shifted from freezing to boiling within hours, and they had named it Haven. The irony was not lost on anyone with functioning cognitive processes. We descended through the cloud layer, our shields barely holding against the electrical storms that crackled through the upper atmosphere. The colony itself was small, maybe 300 human inhabitants, clustered around a central compound, but the distress signal wasn't coming from the compound. It was coming from the forest. "Sir, I'm detecting life signs," said Mira, our scanner specialist. She was a Delphini, all smooth blue skin and oversized cranium, multiple signatures, including several apex predators and, oh, stars above. "What?" Kel demanded. "A human juvenile, alone, surrounded." The silence in our ship was deafening. A human child, alone in a forest that made our survival specialists weep, surrounded by predators. The kid was already dead. Had to be. But then Mira said something that changed everything. "There's another signature. Small mammalian. It's between the child and the predators." We landed the ship in a clearing roughly 200 meters from the life signs. Kel assembled a rescue team, which included myself, Mira, and a security officer named Grax. Grax was a Thorian, built like a mobile fortress with natural armor plating and enough firepower to level a small building. If anything in that forest wanted to cause trouble, Grax would convince it otherwise. Or so we thought. The forest was worse than our scans had indicated. Trees that looked like they were grown from nightmares twisted overhead, their bark secreting some kind of acidic resin that hissed when it hit the ground. Something howled in the distance, a sound that made my survival instincts scream at me to return to the ship immediately. "Life signs ahead," Mira whispered, her scanner clutched like a religious talisman. 50 meters. We crept forward, weapons raised, every sense on maximum alert. The undergrowth rustled. Something large moved to our left. Grax swung his plasma rifle toward it, but Kel held up a hand. "Hold fire. We don't know what we're dealing with yet." That's when we heard it. A child's voice, high and clear, cutting through the oppressive silence of the forest. "It's okay, Rascal. They're just big." We emerged into a small clearing, and I swear on my homeworld's twin moons, what I saw there defied every bit of logic I possessed. A human child, no more than 6 solar cycles old, sat, cross-legged on a fallen log. She had dark hair pulled into 2 messy bundles on either side of her head, and she wore clothing that was torn and stained with mud and something that might have been blood. Her name, we would later learn, was Emma Lou. But Emma wasn't what made us freeze. Surrounding the clearing were at least 8 predators. I recognized them from our planetary survey data. Shadowprowlers, they were called. Apex predators, pack hunters, each one massing roughly 200 kilograms of muscle, claw, and teeth. They had been known to take down prey 3 times their size. They hunted in coordinated groups and showed remarkable intelligence for non-sentient creatures. Every single one of them was lying down. Not sleeping. Not resting. Lying down in a posture I recognized from my xenobiology courses as submission, and between Emma and the closest shadow prowler stood the most ridiculous creature I had ever seen. It was small, maybe 10 kilograms. It had a stocky body covered in black and white fur, short legs, and a face that looked like it was permanently annoyed with the universe. It stood on all fours, positioning itself directly between the child and the predators, and it was making a noise that can only be described as a combination between a growl, a snarl, and a war cry. "What in the 17 hells is that?" Grax whispered. Mira consulted her scanner, her face going through several interesting color changes. According to the database, it's a creature native to Earth. Species name, Mellivora capensis. Common name, honey badger. "That tiny thing?" Kel said, incredulous. "That's protecting the child from 8 Shadowprowlers." As if to answer his question, one of the Shadowprowlers shifted slightly, maybe trying to get a better position. The honey badger, Rascal, apparently, spun toward it with speed that shouldn't have been possible for something with such short legs. It made a sound that I can only describe as concentrated rage given audio form. The Shadowprowler, a creature that could snap a Thorian's spine with one bite, whimpered and flattened itself even lower to the ground. "Okay," I said slowly. "That's not normal." Emma looked up at us then, her small face breaking into a smile that was somehow both innocent and completely oblivious to the mortal danger surrounding her. "Hi! Did Mommy send you? I got lost during the collection expedition. But Rascal found me, so it's okay." Collection expedition. Right. Because human parents apparently let their 6-year-olds wander through death forests as some kind of educational activity. Kel activated his translator, speaking in the simplified human language we had all been required to learn. "Child Emma, we are here to help you. But we need you to move very slowly toward us." "Can you do that?" Emma tilted her head, confused. "Why slowly? The big kitties are nice." Rascal told them to behave. "I want you to understand something. Shadowprowlers were not nice. They were efficient killing machines. They were the reason our survey team had recommended a minimum security rating of level 7 for this colony. They were the reason 3 of our xenobiologists had refused to even land on this planet, and this human child was calling them big kitties. But what happened next made everything else pale in comparison. Rascal, the honey badger, turned to look at Emma, then it looked at us. Then it looked back at the Shadowprowlers, and I swear on everything I hold sacred, that creature made a decision. It chittered at Emma, a softer sound than the war cry from before. Emma stood up, brushing dirt off her pants. "Rascal says we can go now. The big kitties promised to stay here until we're gone." "The kitties promised," Grax repeated, his voice flat with disbelief. But here's the thing that made my head spin. When Emma started walking toward us, Rascal moving alongside her like a furry, aggressive guardian, the Shadowprowlers didn't move. They stayed in their submissive positions, tracking us with their eyes but making no move to follow. One of them, the largest, made a soft wooфing sound. Emma paused, turned, and waved. "Goodbye. Thank you for not eating me." The Shadowprowler, and I will stand by this observation until my dying day, dipped its head in what could only be interpreted as a respectful acknowledgement. We got Emma back to the ship without incident, though every one of us kept our weapons drawn and our sensors on maximum alert. The honey badger, Rascal, stayed with Emma the entire time, occasionally glancing back toward the forest with what I could only describe as a smug expression. As we lifted off, Mira pulled up every piece of data she could find on honey badgers. What she discovered made the entire situation even more insane. "They're listed as one of the most fearless animals on Earth," she said, reading from her screen. "They've been documented fighting off lions, hyenas, and even groups of leopards. They have incredibly thick skin that's resistant to bites and stings. They're immune to most venoms. They can break out of nearly any enclosure. And according to this, they hold grudges. They remember threats and will seek revenge." "Revenge?" Kel said weakly. "A 10-kilogram mammal seeks revenge. There's more," Mira continued. "They're called honey badgers because they raid beehives for honey, completely ignoring thousands of stings. They eat venomous snakes for fun. They've been observed using tools. And get this, they're so tenacious that most predators learn to avoid them entirely, because the effort of fighting one is never worth it." I looked at the view screen, where Emma was sitting in the medical bay, Rascal curled up at her feet. The honey badger's eyes were closed, but I got the distinct impression it was only pretending to sleep. So, what you're saying, I said slowly, is that we just witnessed a creature that Earth itself couldn't kill, convincing 8 apex predators from another world to submit, all to protect a human child. That's exactly what I'm saying, Mira confirmed. Grax made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been existential terror. Humans brought their apex predators with them. They colonized a death world and brought creatures from their own death world as pets. When we delivered Emma back to the colony, her mother, Dr. Elizabeth Liu, head xenobotanist, was beside herself with worry and relief. She hugged Emma so tightly I thought the child might break, then looked at Rascal with exasperation and affection. You found her again, didn't you, you stubborn little beast, Dr. Liu said. Rascal made a satisfied churring sound. Again? Kel asked. Dr. Liu sighed. This is the third time Emma's wandered off during field work, and it's the third time Rascals found her and kept her safe until we could retrieve her. Last time it was a pack of razorwings. Time before that, a territorial thornback. And the honey badger just handles it? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Liu smiled, a knowing expression that spoke of humanity's long relationship with impossible creatures. Rascal was bred from a long line of conservation animals back on Earth. His great-great-grandmother was famous for chasing off poachers. It's in their nature. They don't back down. Ever. As we prepared to leave New Haven, I couldn't stop thinking about what we had witnessed. The Galactic Federation had protocols for everything. First contact scenarios, hostile encounters, natural disasters, you name it. But nowhere in our databases was there a protocol for small Earth mammal convinces alien apex predators to behave through sheer audacity. On the flight back to our station, Kel called us into the briefing room. His expression was grave. I'm putting this in my report, he said. But I want you all to understand something. What we saw today changes the calculation on humans. We thought we understood them. Tough species from a harsh world. But this. He pulled up footage we had captured of Rascal facing down the Shadowprowlers. This tells us that humans don't just survive their world. They befriend it. They form bonds with creatures that should, by all logic, be their enemies. And those creatures don't just tolerate humans. They protect them. With their lives if necessary. Mira nodded slowly. The honey badger could have run. Could have hidden. Instead, it stood between a child and certain death, and it won through sheer force of will. Exactly, Kel said. Now multiply that across every species humans have domesticated or befriended. Dogs that will die for their owners, cats that bring them food, birds that warn them of danger, horses that carry them into battle, and now honey badgers that stare down alien predators. Sir, I said, what exactly are you saying? Kel looked at each of us in turn. I'm saying that we need to adjust our threat assessment of humans. Not because they're more dangerous than we thought, but because they're never alone. Every human comes with an invisible army of Earth creatures that have decided, for reasons we don't fully understand, that humans are worth protecting. He wasn't wrong. In the cycles that followed, as human colonies spread across the Federation, we saw it again and again. Dogs that detected seismic activity before it hit. Cats that somehow knew which colonists were sick before medical scanners caught it. Horses that navigated terrain that confused our best navigation systems. And honey badgers. Always the honey badgers. There was an incident on Kepler 442b, where a honey badger named Chaos, because of course humans would name it that, fought off a crystalline predator for 47 minutes straight until reinforcements arrived. The predator was 5 times its size and made of living silicon. The honey badger won. Another incident on Proxima Centauri b involved a honey badger called Mayhem. Yes, really. That broke into a poacher's camp and destroyed thousands of credits worth of equipment because they had been trapping local fauna. The honey badger had no owner present. It just decided that poaching was unacceptable and took matters into its own paws. But it all came back to that day in the forest of New Haven. To little Emma Lou, sitting calmly, while apex predators surrounded her, protected by 10 kilograms of attitude and teeth. To Rascal, standing his ground against impossible odds because that's what honey badgers did. The galaxy learned something important that day. Humans were formidable, yes, but humans had friends. And those friends, particularly the small, furry, ridiculously fearless ones, would move heaven and earth to keep them safe. I later asked Dr. Liu why Rascal was so protective of Emma specifically. She had smiled and said something that haunted me. Rascal imprinted on Emma when she was a baby. He watched her grow up. And honey badgers, for all their reputation for ferocity, are actually incredibly intelligent and emotional creatures. He doesn't see a child that needs protecting. He sees family. And you do not mess with a honey badger's family. Family. That was the word that explained everything. Humans didn't conquer Earth. They made family with it. Every species they touched, from the mighty wolf to the tiny honey badger, became part of an extended clan. And that clan looked out for each other with a loyalty that transcended logic or survival instinct. As our ship jumped to hyperspace, leaving New Haven behind, I watched the planet recede into the distance. Somewhere down there, a honey badger named Rascal was probably napping in a sunbeam, completely unaware that he had fundamentally altered the Galactic Federation's understanding of humanity. Or maybe he knew. Maybe that was part of the plan all along. With honey badgers, you could never quite tell. 6 months after the New Haven incident, I found myself reassigned to the Diplomatic Relations Division. Apparently, surviving an encounter with a honey badger qualified me as an expert on human-animal partnerships. The logic escaped me, but arguing with bureaucracy was pointless regardless of which species ran it. My new assignment brought me to a space station orbiting the human homeworld, Earth itself. The station, called Unity 7, served as a hub for cross-species research and cultural exchange. It was here that the Federation hoped to better understand humanity before they spread too far across colonized space. I was not optimistic. My partner in this endeavor was a human scientist named Dr. Marcus Webb. He was tall, even by human standards, with graying hair and a perpetual expression of bemused tolerance. When we first met, he shook my appendage with enthusiasm that nearly dislocated 3 of my joints. "Heard about your little adventure on New Haven," he said, grinning. "Rascal's become quite famous, you know. There's a whole documentary series about protective Earth animals in colonial spaces. He's the star of episode 3. "Wonderful," I replied, trying to regain feeling in my appendage. "I'm thrilled to have contributed to entertainment media." Marcus laughed, a booming sound that echoed through the station corridor. "You've got a sense of humor. That's good. You'll need it for what we're about to show you." He led me to a research facility in the lower decks of the station. The lighting was dimmer here, adjusted for various species' visual spectrums. We passed several labs where humans and aliens worked side by side on projects I couldn't begin to understand. Then Marcus stopped at a door marked with symbols I recognized as warnings. Biohazard. Extreme caution. Authorized personnel only. "Before we go in," Marcus said, his tone shifting to something more serious, "I need you to understand something. What happened on New Haven wasn't an isolated incident. It's a pattern we're only now beginning to document." He opened the door. The room beyond was massive, converted into what humans called a terrarium. It simulated multiple Earth environments: desert, forest, grassland, even a small aquatic section. But what caught my attention were the creatures moving through these spaces. There were dozens of them, different species, different sizes, all coexisting in apparent harmony. "Welcome to Project Guardian," Marcus said quietly. "Here, we study the phenomenon you witnessed firsthand, the protective instinct Earth creatures exhibit toward humans, and now, toward other species." A small, furry creature scurried past my feet. I jumped backward, my survival reflexes screaming. "Relax," Marcus said. "That's just Bandit. He's a raccoon. Completely harmless unless you threaten his food, and even then he'll just lecture you about it." "Lecture," I repeated, watching the raccoon pause to manipulate what looked like a complex puzzle box. It solved the mechanism in under 30 seconds, retrieved a treat from inside, and then proceeded to wash it in a nearby water dish before eating. "They're tool users," Marcus explained. "Problem solvers. Back on Earth, they adapted to human cities so successfully that they became urban legends. Now we're finding they can adapt to alien environments just as easily." He guided me deeper into the facility. We passed enclosures containing creatures I recognized from Earth databases: dogs of various breeds, cats that watched us with unnerving intelligence, birds that mimicked sounds with disturbing accuracy. Then we reached an enclosure that made me stop completely. Inside were 3 honey badgers. "Meet the research team," Marcus said with what I was learning to recognize as human sarcasm. "That's Havoc on the left, Trouble in the middle, and Bedlam on the right. You name them after destruction," I observed. "We name them accurately," Marcus corrected. "These 3 have been with us for 8 months. In that time, they've escaped containment 42 times, reorganized our security protocols, and somehow convinced the station's resident Krillian ambassador that they deserved his lunch every single day." "Convinced how?" Marcus's grin widened. Stared at him. Just stared. "Krillians have 9 eyes, and they swear that honey badgers can make eye contact with all 9 simultaneously. The ambassador now brings extra food specifically for them." One of the honey badgers, Havoc I think, ambled over to the transparent barrier separating us. It looked at me with dark eyes that contained far too much awareness for a creature supposedly operating on instinct alone. "They remember you," Marcus said softly. "That's impossible. I never encountered these specific individuals." "Are you sure about that?" I wasn't. Suddenly, I wasn't sure of anything. I wasn't sure of anything. Marcus led me to his office, a cluttered space filled with data tablets, physical books that humans still inexplicably preferred, and what appeared to be a nest made by one of the raccoons in the corner filing cabinet. "Coffee?" Marcus offered, holding up a container of the dark liquid humans consumed with religious devotion. "No, thank you. It interferes with my neural chemistry. Suit yourself." He poured himself a cup and settled into his chair. "Let me tell you why you're really here. The Federation is scared. Of honey badgers? Of what they represent." Marcus took a long drink. "When humans joined the Federation, everyone focused on our technology, our adaptability, our tendency to survive things that should kill us, but they missed the bigger picture." He pulled up a holographic display showing star maps with human colonies marked in blue. Every single colony has brought Earth animals, not as cargo, not as livestock, as companions, as partners, and those partners are changing the equation on every world they touch. The display shifted, showing incident reports. Dozens of them, hundreds. Proxima B. A dog named Duke detected a gas leak 3 hours before sensors picked it up. Saved 200 lives. Tau Ceti E. A cat called Whisper. Alerted colonists to an underground predator nest. Prevented a massacre. Glisa 581 grams. A horse named Thunder found a lost survey team in terrain that had defeated our best tracking technology. Marcus paused, his expression growing more intense. Marcus paused, and then there are the incidents involving direct confrontation. Animals defending humans, defending aliens, even defending other animals against threats that should overwhelm them. Like Rascal and the Shadowprowlers, I said quietly. Exactly like that. Except it's happening everywhere. And the Federation command structure doesn't know how to classify it. Is it training? Instinct? Something else entirely? What do you think it is? Marcus leaned back, considering. I think it's partnership. Real partnership. The kind that developed over thousands of years on a world that tried very hard to kill everything living on it. Humans and animals learned to survive together. We became stronger together. And now that bond is extending beyond Earth. A chime interrupted us. Marcus glanced at his communication device, and his expression changed to concern mixed with excitement. We have a situation in the station's agricultural sector. One of the Vexalian researchers got trapped when a structural support failed. Emergency teams are en route, but there's a complication. What kind of complication? The area's flooding with nutrient solution. It's caustic to most species, including Vexalians. He's got maybe 20 minutes before exposure causes permanent damage. And this concerns our research. How? Marcus was already moving toward the door. Because Duchess is in that sector. Duchess? German Shepherd. Search and rescue trained. She was doing behavioral observation work with the agricultural team. We ran through the station corridors, Marcus somehow keeping pace despite his longer stride requiring more oxygen. Other personnel rushed past us, emergency teams with equipment, medical staff preparing for casualties. When we reached the agricultural sector, chaos greeted us. Alarms blared. Emergency lights pulsed. A crowd had gathered outside the sealed entrance, held back by security. The doors jammed, a Morgalian officer explained. We're trying to override, but the flooding damaged the controls. Manual extraction will take at least 30 minutes. The Vexalian doesn't have 30 minutes, Marcus said. That's when we heard it. A bark. Single, sharp, echoing through the station's ventilation system. Marcus grabbed a communication headset from one of the emergency workers. Duchess? Duchess, can you hear me? Another bark. Closer this time. She's in the ventilation system, I said, suddenly understanding. She found another way in. Marcus nodded grimly. German shepherds are problem solvers. If there's a way to reach someone in danger, they'll find it. We rushed to a maintenance access panel. Marcus pulled it open, revealing a crawl space that led into the station's infrastructure. Without hesitation, he crawled inside. I followed, my smaller frame actually advantageous in the confined space. The sounds of dripping liquid echoed around us. Somewhere ahead, we could hear splashing and a voice crying out in distress. The Vexalian researcher. Then we heard something else. Duchess. Barking steadily, the sound acting as a beacon. We emerged into the agricultural sector through a ceiling panel. The scene below was dire. The chamber was half flooded with caustic nutrient solution. Equipment floated in the green liquid. And there, clinging to a narrow platform near the ceiling, was the Vexalian researcher, a young female named Liz. But she wasn't alone. Duchess stood on the platform next to her, having somehow climbed through the same ventilation system we had used. The dog was soaked, her fur matted with the nutrient solution, which had to be burning her skin, but she wasn't moving. She stood between Liz and the edge of the platform, preventing the panicked researcher from falling into the caustic liquid below. Duchess, good girl, Marcus called out. Stay. The dog's ears perked up at her handler's voice, but she didn't leave her post. Marcus assessed the situation quickly. We need to get them both out. The ventilation shaft is too narrow for Liz, and Duchess won't leave her. Then we need another option, I said, looking around. There, attached to the wall about 3 meters away, was an emergency ladder leading to a maintenance exit, but reaching it would require crossing a section of floor that was rapidly being consumed by the rising solution. I have an idea, I said, but it's completely insane. Those are my favorite kind, Marcus replied. I explained quickly. Marcus listened, his expression cycling through disbelief, calculation, and finally acceptance. It might work, he admitted, but we'll need cooperation from Duchess. Can she understand complex instructions? Marcus smiled grimly. She's a German shepherd. They understand more than most sentient species I've met. He called out to the dog, speaking in clear, simple commands. Duchess, listen, walk, slow, guideless, to ladder. Understand? The dog tilted her head, processing. Then she did something that made my blood run cold. She gently took Liz's sleeve in her mouth and tugged. Liz understood, terrified, but trusting. She began to move. Duchess walked beside her, step by careful step, along the narrow platform. When they reached the section where the floor had collapsed, Duchess stopped. This was the critical moment. The ladder was visible, but separated from their position by a gap of churning caustic solution. Marcus pulled off his jacket and tore it into strips. He tied them together, creating a makeshift rope. We'll throw this across. Liz can use it to maintain balance while crossing on that support beam. That beam is 10 centimeters wide and covered in corrosive liquid, I pointed out. Do you have a better idea? I didn't. Marcus threw the rope. It landed, perfectly, draping across the gap. Liz caught it with her secondary manipulators, gripping it tightly. But Duchess barked once, sharp and commanding. Then she did something I will never forget. The dog walked onto the support beam first. Slowly, carefully, placing each paw with precision that defied her species' typical coordination. Duchess crossed. The beam was barely wide enough. The caustic solution splashed up, burning her paws. But she didn't falter. When she reached the other side, she turned and barked again. The message was clear. I showed you it's possible. Now you come. Liz, inspired by the dog's courage, began to cross. Marcus kept the rope taut, providing stability. I held my breath, counting her steps. 1, 2, 3, 4. Halfway across, Liz's foot slipped. She teetered, about to fall. Duchess lunged forward, grabbing Liz's sleeve again, pulling her forward with strength that shouldn't have been possible for a creature her size. Liz stumbled onto the solid platform, gasping. They had made it. The emergency teams extracted them minutes later through the maintenance exit. Duchess required immediate medical attention for chemical burns on her paws and body. Liz was treated for exposure and trauma. In the medical bay, I watched as human and alien veterinary specialists worked on Duchess. The dog lay still, allowing them to treat her injuries, occasionally thumping her tail when Marcus spoke to her. Liz sat nearby, her chromatophores shifting colors and patterns I recognized as Vexalian emotional expression. Gratitude, awe, disbelief. She saved me, Liz whispered. I am not even her species. I am not even from her world. But she saved me. Marcus nodded. That's what they do. It's not about species. It's about pack. And once you're in the pack, they protect you, no matter what. Later, in Marcus's office, I finally asked the question that had been building since New Haven. Why? I understand evolutionary partnerships, mutual benefit, symbiosis. But this goes beyond that. These animals sacrifice themselves for beings they have no genetic or evolutionary connection to. It defies biological logic. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that changed my entire understanding. Maybe it's not about biology. Maybe it's about something we can't measure with scanners or quantify with data. Humans call it love, loyalty, honor. We spent millennia with these creatures. We evolved alongside them. And somewhere in that process, we taught them that some things matter more than survival. That protecting the pack, protecting family, is worth any cost. But Liz isn't family. Duchess met her 3 weeks ago. Doesn't matter. Duchess decided she was worth protecting. That's the choice. That's what the Federation doesn't understand. These animals choose, every time. And they choose to protect, to help, to sacrifice, because that's what being part of Earth taught them. The door opened. Liz entered, moving stiffly but under her own power. She approached Duchess, who was resting on a medical pad, bandaged and medicated but alert. Liz performed a gesture I recognized from Vexalian culture, a formal bow of deepest respect, reserved for those who had saved one's life. Duchess thumped her tail once. Message received. Message understood. 3 months after the incident, I was called to a Federation Council meeting. Representatives from 40 species gathered in the Grand Chamber, and I was asked to present my findings on human-animal partnerships. I stood before them, these beings from across the galaxy, and I told them everything. New Haven, Project Guardian, the agricultural sector rescue, every incident I had documented or witnessed. When I finished, the chamber erupted in debate. Some representatives argued for restrictions on which Earth animals could accompany colonists. Others demanded more research. A few wanted outright bans, citing unpredictability. But one voice cut through the noise. Ambassador Talara, a Visian elder with 3 centuries of diplomatic experience, raised her sensory fans for silence. We debate restrictions and regulations, she said, her voice carrying ancient authority. But we missed the fundamental question. These creatures, these honey badgers and dogs and cats and all the rest, they have shown us something we had forgotten. She paused, letting her words sink in. They have shown us that courage is not about size or weapons or technology. It is about standing your ground when standing makes no logical sense. It is about protecting those weaker than yourself, even when survival says to run. It is about choosing loyalty over safety, every single time. Talara looked directly at me. The Galactic Federation was built on principles of cooperation and mutual defense, but we had become comfortable, bureaucratic. We had forgotten what it means to truly have each other's backs. These Earth creatures, they remember. They live it. Every day. She turned to address the full assembly. I propose we do not restrict human-animal partnerships. I propose we learn from them. Because if a 10-kilogram honey badger can teach apex predators to bow, imagine what we might achieve if we embraced that same fearless dedication to protecting one another. The vote was called. The measure to restrict animal companions to human colonies failed spectacularly. Instead, a new program was established, the Interspecies Guardian Initiative. Its purpose was to study, document, and facilitate beneficial relationships between Earth animals and other species. Funding was allocated. Research stations were built, and I was appointed as its director. 6 years later, I stood in that same forest on New Haven. The colony had grown, now housing over 2,000 inhabitants from 15 different species. The Shadowprowlers still lived in the surrounding wilderness, but attacks had ceased entirely, because the colony had established a guardian program. Dogs patrolled the perimeters, cats monitored the smaller entry points, and yes, there were honey badgers, 7 of them, each assigned to different sections of the colony. Emma Lou, now 12 years old and already enrolled in xenobiology studies, walked beside me. Rascal, older but no less fierce, padded along at her heels. "Do you ever think about that day?" I asked her. "When you were lost in the forest?" Emma smiled. "Every day. It taught me something important." "What's that?" "What? That being small doesn't mean being powerless. Rascal taught me that. He taught all of us that." She looked down at the honey badger, who had stopped to investigate something in the undergrowth. "Size doesn't matter. Species doesn't matter. What matters is deciding to stand up, to protect, to care, even when it's dangerous." Rascal emerged from the bushes, carrying something in his mouth. He brought it to Emma and dropped it at her feet. A small medical device, probably dropped by a survey team months ago. "Good boy," Emma said, retrieving the device. "Always looking out for us." Rascal made his satisfied churring sound and continued walking. As we returned to the colony compound, I reflected on how much had changed. The galaxy was different now, not because of new technology or political treaties, but because of the simplest truth, demonstrated by the bravest creatures. That true strength came from standing together, from protecting those who couldn't protect themselves, from choosing courage over comfort, action over apathy, love over fear. Even predators bowed when they recognized that truth, especially when it came in a 10-kilogram package of absolute audacity and unconditional devotion. The honey badger had taught us all a lesson, not through words or demonstrations, but through action, through standing between a child and certain death, through staring down creatures that outweighed it 20-1, through simply refusing to accept that size-determined outcome. And the galaxy, slowly but surely, was learning. As the sun set over New Haven, painting the sky in colors no Earth sunset could match, I watched Emma and Rascal head home. Behind them, visible in the tree line, 8 Shadowprowlers sat watching, not hunting, just watching, protecting their territory, yes, but also, in their own way, protecting the colony that had taught them a new way to exist, because that's what Earth creatures did. They taught, they protected, they loved, and they never ever backed down. The story that began with a distress call in a deadly forest had become something larger, a movement, a philosophy, a reminder to an entire galaxy that sometimes the smallest among us carry the biggest hearts, that courage isn't measured in size but in determination, and that when a honey badger decides you're worth protecting, even the stars themselves had better step aside. Because nothing in the universe, absolutely nothing, is more unstoppable than an Earth creature that has decided you are family. Nothing at all.